Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, February the 18th, 2025. Today, the Sun moves into Pisces, and the moment the Sun moves into Pisces, it makes a mutual reception by exaltation with Venus in Aries, and that's something I'll be talking about in a moment. And as far as my main topic of the video is concerned, it's going to be the discovery of Pluto. Pluto was discovered 25 years ago today, on February the 18th, 1930. And I want to consider the astrology of Pluto's discovery and also the weird way in which that discovery chart links with some events connected with Pluto. But before I do that, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, February the 18th. Usual reminder, if you enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it, and if you're not subscribed, I would be over the moon if you were to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, but apparently it makes a difference to the channel. So here is the position of the planets at noon today, which is February the 18th, 2025. As usual, set for New York, and you can see that the Sun is indeed moving into Pisces. You can see that the Sun is at 0 degrees 17 minutes Pisces at noon New York time. So when the Sun moves into Pisces, it immediately makes a mutual reception to Venus by exaltation. Venus is exalted in Pisces, the Sun is exalted in Aries, so they exchange signs by exaltation. And this does mean that the Sun has a rapid and instantaneous change of fortunes, because the Sun in Aquarius is not actually very strong. It's in its detriment. We often don't think of the Sun having a sign in it, the Sun being in its detriment, but yes, it can be, and it is in Aquarius. And so when it leaves Aquarius, it straight away gains from the fact that it's in, well, firstly, that it's out of Aquarius, out of the sign of its detriment, and also the fact that it's in mutual reception to Venus. So huge change there. And I think many of us might feel it. I think that, in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, Sun in Aquarius represents the depths of winter, and now with the Sun in a sign that's ruled by Jupiter, that kind of changes our attitude a little bit. Not that there's anything wrong with the winter, but it is the fact that we do have this mutual reception with Venus that does really give us a boost. Now, the Sun may be getting stronger. The Moon, at least by sign, is not getting stronger, because the Moon is moving out of Libra and into Scorpio. And the Moon is at 8 degrees Scorpio at noon, New York time. And the Moon in Scorpio is in its fall. At least on the surface, it's getting weaker. But actually, we've got this rather interesting state now, where you've got the Sun is in mutual reception to Venus by exaltation, and the Moon is in mutual reception to Mars by sign, because Moon is in Scorpio, a sign ruled by Mars, and Mars is in Cancer, a sign which is ruled by the Moon. So at the moment, while Mars is in Cancer, the Moon moving into Scorpio isn't as difficult as it usually is. Yes, the Moon is in its fall in Scorpio. Yes, the Moon is in the Via Combusta in Scorpio, but it does have a certain strength which it doesn't usually have. So you could argue that, both the Sun and the Moon are strongly placed, at least because of these because of these mutual receptions. And the moon is rather intense at the moment. At the beginning of the day, you can see that the moon is actually making a conjunction to true black moon Lilith, and also it's making a square to Pluto. And so there are things that are kept hidden, but there are also powerful feelings underlying it all. And then the moon is making a trine to Saturn. Trine to Mercury. It is making a trine to Saturn, but that's a bit later. I wouldn't have said it's particularly immediate, that moon trine to Saturn in Pisces, but the moon is making a trine to Mercury. That's quite a fortunate event. It's interesting. We've got a lot of mutual receptions. Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter, and the moon in mutual reception to Mars is making a trine to Mercury in mutual reception to Jupiter. So that moon Mercury trine is very free flowing. We can say what we feel, and we can do it in a way that's very natural. We don't have to make a big fuss about it, and we're unlikely to make mistakes. Just give it a time. We don't have to be in a hurry to say what's on our mind, but it should all sort of present itself very, very naturally. So those are some of the things going on. Oh, there's also a semi-square between Venus and Uranus. So Venus in Aries is making a semi-square to Uranus in Taurus. That's potentially quite an important aspect. And I probably should have made some space for that aspect, because Venus, for Venus being semi-square Uranus, it's dynamic, and it may say something about relationships, how we get on with people, and it could be a sign that something might happen but we weren't fully expecting. And in terms of other people, we shouldn't assume that they're going to behave in a particular way. But Venus semi-square Uranus can also be about art, what we find beautiful, what we think we find beautiful, and tastes can change. What seems beautiful today may be completely ugly tomorrow. And so that's a picture set for New York. If we set the chart for Sydney, Australia, so this is we set the chart for sort of noon in Sydney. The sun is still in Aquarius, so you can see that the sun at noon in Sydney, as a representative of Australia and New Zealand and East Asia, the sun is only at 29:37 Aquarius. So that means that the sun doesn't go into Pisces until later in the day. More like the evening, possibly quite late in the evening, because London time the sun goes into Pisces at 10:06 a.m. So if you think that Australia and New Zealand are quite a long way ahead of London, so that's not going to happen until this evening, maybe even right into tomorrow morning if you're in New Zealand. So that's the sun and the moon. The moon is in Scorpio at noon, so the first part of the day in Australasia, the moon will be in Libra, but there will be that sign change. And if you are in Australia or New Zealand, maybe the important lunar aspect is moon square Pluto, moon in very early Scorpio, making that square to Pluto. So there could be a certain amount of intensity there. It is a serious day, but all of us, wherever we are, we have to deal with moon in Scorpio. And then there's the heliocentric picture. And these are the positions. That is the heliocentric picture. Let me just switch it to the heliocentric coordinates. And even then, that's no good. So that's a heliocentric. Sorry about this. That's a heliocentric picture for the 11th. Let's switch it to the 18th. There we go. Okay, so that's that's a heliocentric picture for today, and it's, in a way, a little bit dramatic because we've got two conjunctions forming. We've got Mercury conjunct Neptune there in late Pisces, 29 degrees Pisces, and we've got this Venus-Mars conjunction getting really close. And so Mercury conjunct Neptune, we can say the usual things about Mercury conjunct Neptune. It's a sense in which things are happening maybe behind closed doors. It could be about conversations happening, maybe relating to people in government, diplomats, people not being entirely honest. There's something very devious about Mercury conjunct Neptune, and devious about countries and governments in terms of what they're discussing, and negotiations which may be going in ways that we weren't necessarily expecting. And also we got Venus conjunct Mars. Venus conjunct Mars, it's pretty much exact now. We've been tracking it over the last few days as the heliocentric Venus-Mars conjunction becomes exact. And so with that Venus-Mars conjunction, I mean, it can be about attractiveness. That is possible. But it can also be about repulsion and aggression, because Venus is being damaged by Mars, you could say. Venus tries to get on with people, but Mars can mess things up. But on a personal level, we might not have to worry too much about it. These forces are quite collective. The heliocentric chart doesn't have an ascendant. It doesn't really have a moon, because the moon is in the same place, same position as the Earth. Of course, the Earth is always exactly opposition to the Sun. So the Sun has just gone into Pisces. So from a heliocentric perspective, the Earth has just gone into Virgo. So let's now look at the 12 signs, do my forecast for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, February the 18th, 2025. Aries. Aries, you are perhaps a little more intense than usual. I mean, you certainly have very strong feelings and strong opinions. And you don't take these opinions lightly. I mean, look at the moon. The moon is the moon is in Scorpio. It's in mutual reception to Mars. So, the moon is in Scorpio, a sign ruled by Mars. Mars is in Cancer, a sign ruled by the moon. And so with that Moon-Mars mutual reception, you are certainly able to look after yourself. And you're not someone who you want to come up with in terms of a conflict or an argument. And if you do get involved in an argument, I think you'll be very good at pushing your view. I mean, after all, the moon is making a trine to Mercury, and it might not be entirely obvious. When we think about Aries, we think about someone who is dynamic, who is very assertive, wants to tell everyone who's boss. That's an Aries stereotype. Telling everyone who's boss, that's not quite an Aries thing. That's too rigid for the average Aries. But with that moon trine Mercury, it's got a certain subtlety to it. You can get your way and you can establish your presence without necessarily having to scream and shout about it. It's just the way you are and the way you present yourself, and people do take you seriously. And we've just looked at the heliocentric chart, when we look at the positions of the planets from a viewpoint of the Earth, and we noticed that there was a conjunction between Venus and Mars. Now, I did suggest that this Venus-Mars conjunction might be problematic because Venus is under pressure from Mars, but looking at it from an Aries point of view, then you could say that Venus is close to Mars. So Venus maybe at some level is softening Mars. So maybe you're able to get your way without having to use too much force, just by being yourself. And by being yourself, but at the same time not compromising, refusing to compromise, that is probably the best way of going about things. And at the same time, Aries, try to be subtle. You might want to say things, you might feel that it's very important to say what's on your mind, but sometimes it just doesn't matter. Sometimes people just get it without you having to tell them. Maybe you just have to look at them in a particular way to express your displeasure. That might be all it takes. If you feel that something is wrong, people might pick up on the fact that it is wrong. And so, there are a number of ways of being influential, and being direct and angry isn't necessarily the only way or even the best way of doing it. And in many cases, Aries, it just might be a time where you can just act behind the scenes. People might not notice what you're doing, but you're there. You are pulling the strings. And this is it's a somewhat unnatural posture for Aries to take. But at the moment, I do believe that it might well be the right approach. And just provided you make sure that you're never doing something you don't want to do, and that you're always very clear to yourself about what you want to be doing, then I think the environment around you will naturally configure to your inner desires. Taurus, there is a big change. Sun moving into Pisces. Okay, the Sun might not move into Pisces until tomorrow if you're in New Zealand, but one way or another, the Sun is moving into Pisces. And from a Taurian perspective, that certainly has a big impact on you. And most importantly, it makes your ruling planet, Venus, so much stronger. Because, Venus is in Aries. Venus doesn't really function particularly well in Aries. Venus is, rules Libra. In Aries, it's in its detriment. And so you might have felt that you weren't fully able to be yourself, and it was difficult to be clear about who you are, what you want, and you felt the need to be assertive. But how actually were you able to put that into action? That could have been hard work. But now that the Sun is moving into Pisces, it means that the Sun and Venus are in mutual reception, and straight away you feel the change, because Sun and Venus are in the signs of each other's exaltation, and because of that sign change, straight away you just feel more able to be yourself, and things that you couldn't say or you couldn't do, now it's all open to you. And from a social perspective, you're going to be more confident, and you'll know that you can establish your presence, and people will take notice of you. Though it does kind of work both ways. I mean, the moon is moving into Scorpio, so with the moon in Scorpio, you have the opportunity also to take notice of other people, and you are going to be quite sensitive. And the moon is actually making a mutual reception to Mars. A lot of mutual receptions around today, and with a mutual reception between the moon and Mars being in each other's signs, that means you just have a natural understanding of other people. Sometimes that can be quite difficult. Taurians can actually be incredibly unsubtle. They don't see the cues. They just feel they have to say what's on their mind, and they're very solid about it, a bit blunt, and that doesn't necessarily go down well. But right now, you should be able to get it. You understand, what's happening, and you understand what people want to hear, and you understand people's sensibilities. And so I don't think there's any reason for you to make social mistakes today. You don't have to be in a hurry to impose your will on other people, and you don't have to be in a hurry to get people to listen to you. You don't have to be in a hurry. Just take your time. Really try to understand what's going on. And there will be moments over the course of the day when you feel that this is your time. This is the right time to push forward. And I think in most cases, your timing is going to be very good. Now, turning to the heliocentric chart, we did have a look at the heliocentric chart. In the heliocentric chart, there is a conjunction between Venus and Mars. I think that Venus-Mars conjunction could be quite important, Taurus, because Venus is your ruler. It's making that conjunction to Mars, and that might symbolize closeness with another person, especially as the moon is in Scorpio, which is your opposite sign. And so that Venus-Mars might represent, there could be closeness, but you might have to be a little bit careful if you get too close to one person, because Venus might be somewhat overwhelmed by Mars. And so use your sensitivity to consider the people around you and what they're like and how they might behave, because some people might really restrict your freedom or try to impose their personalities upon you, and that's not something you want. I mean, that's Venus-Mars conjunction in a negative sense, but we could see it in a positive sense. Venus-Mars conjunction could be about you having the opportunity to get close to someone and be able to benefit from a situation, provided you look after your own interests. And you're helped by the fact that the moon is in Scorpio, the moon is making a trine to Mercury, so that allows you to really speak. You can be understood. People will listen, and you can listen to them. And because of that, if you handle things in the right way and you look after your own interests, it could actually be quite a good day for relationships. Gemini. Gemini, the sun is moving into Pisces, and we now have a lot of stuff in Pisces. We've got Sun, Mercury, Saturn, North Node, Neptune in Pisces. So a lot of action in this sign, and Pisces in the Gemini chart does matter. Pisces is a sign which is about success and wanting recognition, and also it's quite an ambitious sign if you are a Gemini. And the sun moving into Pisces, it makes a mutual reception with Aries. So the sun is actually very strong in Pisces, making that mutual reception by exaltation. And so that does give you strength, and it gives you a certain vision. This is what you want to do. This is where you would like to go to. And certainly if you're in the United States, Tuesday may well be the first day of a working week, because sort of Monday is sort of President's Day. Things can be a bit slow, although I'm not quite sure how seriously people take President's Day. And so this is a time when you are making your presence clear. And if there's anything you want to get off the ground, then Gemini, really now is your chance. And you just have to get on with it, regardless of what the situation is like. Now, you might feel that right now it's not a good time for taking bold maneuvers. That might be your first impression. And what the universe is really telling you is that you don't have to be dramatic about it. To begin with, you might want to take things slowly. You have something you want to move towards. You take it slowly, and you're very deliberate about it, and you make sure everything's done properly, and you listen to your feelings. That's very important. The moon is making a trine to Mercury. Moon in Scorpio making a trine to Mercury. You can listen to your feelings, and you can verbalize those feelings, and you can understand what's happening. So take the time to understand. You certainly don't have to be looking for immediate results. The sun is going to be in Pisces for the next month, so you don't have to have sort of immediate action. The day it moves into Pisces. As I said, if you're in New Zealand, the sun doesn't actually move into Pisces, I don't think, until very early tomorrow morning. So you don't have to do everything at once. And moon trine Mercury, you can collect your thoughts and work out the best approach. Remember, the moon is in mutual reception to Mars, Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter, so that really does allow you to really understand things. And yeah, drama is really unnecessary. It's perhaps in some ways not just about doing the preparations, but sort of gathering your resources. And when we talk about gathering your resources, it's about considering, what you can do. Who do you need to help you? There may be a couple of people who have particular skills that you need to talk to them, or they may not have skills, they might have knowledge. And now is a great time to get in touch with people who know more than you. Perhaps they've got more experience. They've been through something that you may feel you are about to have to go through, and so you want to talk to them about it. You need to understand what the rules are, what to expect. So that emphasizes the point that Gemini, that it is a time for preparation. You don't have to spend a long time preparing, but your preparations are going to be very effective today, and they won't take away from your broader ambitions, and your ambitions are becoming very clear. They are starting to crystallize. Cancer. Moon is in Scorpio, and the moon is in mutual reception to Mars. So yesterday I mentioned that the moon was moving into Scorpio, I think, when I was talking about what was going on for Cancerians. What I didn't mention was that mutual reception to Mars. It's something I kind of forgot, really. I just see moon in Scorpio, but sometimes you just forget that the moon is also in mutual reception to Mars. And this will happen while Mars is in Cancer. So every time the moon goes into Scorpio, it will be the case that it is in mutual reception to Mars. So, if we look ahead, so the next time after today that the moon is in Scorpio will be in sort of, I don't know, around the 17th and 18th of March. 17th or 18th of March, Mars will still be in Cancer. But when the moon is in Scorpio in April, in April, the moon will still be in mutual reception to Mars. So from now, February, April, when the moon is in Scorpio, it will also be in mutual reception to Mars. May, that's different. Mars will be out of Cancer and into Leo. So for the moment, moon in Scorpio is particularly fortunate for you. It's always quite fortunate in its own way, because Cancerians have an affinity with the sign Scorpio. But at the moment, with Mars in your sign, moon in a fellow water sign of Scorpio, and that Moon-Mars mutual reception, you have a great sense, Cancer, of who you are, and what you can do and what is possible. And you, I think, actually have a great sense of self, and that really does matter. And this sense of self can, in many respects, propel you through the day. And people get it. People do understand. At times you might feel that people haven't fully understood you. They haven't really understood what you were getting at. But today the moon makes a trine to Mercury. It's a very nice trine, that Moon Mercury trine. Moon in Cancer, trine Mercury in Pisces, and Moon and Mercury are actually both quite strong. Moon because it's in mutual reception, but with Mars, Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter, and so with that moon trine Mercury, you can explain anything, you can say anything, you can understand anything. Your sensitivity is just going to be really, really great. And Moon Mercury is about the link between the heart and the mind, and the heart and the mind are really well coordinated, and you can say what you feel. You really can, and it will be obvious what you mean. And also, you don't have to be tied to anything. When I'm talking about a fixed view of the world, things have to be like this. No, you can expand your horizons. You can see new possibilities that you don't actually have to be afraid of. And you have to remember that the sun is moving into Pisces. Pisces in the Cancerian chart is a very expansive sign. It's about seeing beyond your immediate environment. It's being aware of possibilities. These possibilities can be about the world. They can be about adventures. They can be about new information, new ideas, new beliefs. And so don't tie yourself to one view of the world. It might be a view of the world that feels very precious to you, but perhaps it's getting a little bit tired, and you need to look at things from a different and more expansive perspective. And with the sun in Pisces, it's not just that the sun is in Pisces. The sun is in a mutual reception to Venus. The sun and Venus are in each other's exaltation signs, and so with that Sun-Venus mutual reception, you're not going to be limited. Absolutely no need to be limited. And it's not just about inspiration. It can be about things that are very practical. So if you are, for example, in a job, or you're trying to create a business, you're in a business, you don't have to take things as they are. You don't have to take things at face value. That Sun-Venus mutual reception gives you the possibility of new things happening, and the old ways of doing things are not necessarily the best ways, and it might then be a good opportunity to learn something new. You might even consider taking a course. It doesn't have to be a very long course, but you just might feel that there's something you need to learn, that if you were to learn it, it would make a big difference. I mean, it may be some online course. It needn't last for years. Or it just might not be anything formal. Just might be, some set of videos on the internet, on YouTube. You just watch them, you learn it, you practice, and you'll pick it up very quickly. And you'll realize how quickly you can pick things up today, because the moon is making a trine to Mercury. And I've already mentioned this moon trine Mercury, but that moon trine Mercury is very much about the mind, the way the mind works, because both the moon and Mercury have connections with the mind. And this means that your mind is actually on really good form today, and it's the whole mind. When one thinks about the mind, one is tempted to think about just words and ideas and seeing it in a purely Mercury way. But the moon is about the mind as well. It's about how we perceive things, how we understand things, and the moon and Mercury are just working so well together that you really have a good understanding of everything. So Cancer, make the most of it. Leo. The sun moving into Pisces, on the face of it, doesn't sound like a particularly fortunate event. I mean, sun in Pisces, if you're a Leo, I mean, Pisces as a sign is, a million miles away from where Leo is. It's too emotional, too watery, and it's a mutable sign, going here, there, and everywhere. This is not something that Leo necessarily appreciates, but the sun is your ruler, and when it goes into Pisces, it is in mutual reception with Venus in Aries, and that makes a big difference. So what has actually happened, Leo, or what is happening, is that the sun, your ruler, is going through a transformation. While it was in Aquarius, the sun was weak. It was in the sign of its detriment. And now it's out of its detriment and it's moving into mutual reception by exaltation with Venus. And so what that means is you are in a much stronger position now. Might not feel like it. That's perhaps because you haven't sort of spread your wings. You haven't, or you perhaps need to change your skin. If you take a snake analogy, a snake changing its skin. I mean, that's an analogy I usually use with Scorpios, not with Leos. But things are changing, and things are changing for the better. But how do you make the most of this? Well, you do have to recognize that Sun in Pisces, it's quite an emotional placement, and you do have to use your feelings and be a little more sensitive than you have been in the past. That's true. And at the same time, you don't have to insist on getting loads of attention. So in order to make the most of your strengths, Leo, you may have to behave in a rather un-Leo kind of way. It's not about getting attention. It's not about being noticed. It's not about being the center of the universe. It's actually about taking a step back, retreating, not being in the limelight. When you're in the limelight, you're weakened. When you're not in the limelight, you're strong. So you have to change your perception. Of course, that is a bit of a stereotype. It's not actually true that every Leo is an egocentric extrovert who insists on getting loads and loads of attention. That's not actually true. There are Leos who are introverts, who are very modest, and so we don't want to get too caught up on that stereotype. But really, Leo, you don't need any attention. You don't need to be in the forefront of what's going on. You can work behind the scenes, and you can work behind the scenes very effectively. And also, with the Sun making a mutual reception to Venus, you can behave in a way that people are going to really like. They will enjoy your company, and there'll be something about you that is exciting, but exciting in a quiet way. If people want to find you exciting, then they can talk to you. They can understand what you're all about, and so that is strong. That Venus in Aries. Venus in Aries is quite a sociable planet. It hasn't been strong recently because the Sun has not been in mutual reception by exaltation with Venus. But now that Sun is in mutual reception by exaltation, then I think that you can really present yourself in the best possible way. But in many cases, this introversion does matter. Introversion, is about being passive. It's about not feeling that you have to make your presence felt. It's not feeling that you always have to take the initiative. Now, I've tried to be positive about Leo so far, and I mean there's a lot to be positive about. If I were to say anything negative about Leo, I would say that if you are contemplating taking any kind of action today, especially if that action is uncharacteristic, it's something you don't normally do, then I would suggest that you think again, because it might get you into trouble. Something you want to do, something you want to say. You might even want to be dramatic. It's not a time for drama, by the way, but if you want to be dramatic, if you want to pick a fight with someone, it's not going to work. I don't think it's going to work. And you might get yourself into a situation that you very quickly start to regret. But I'm talking about a situation that you don't have to get involved with. Just be quiet, calm down, use your strengths, understand your strengths, and don't feel that you have to do anything right now. Just enjoy the fact that the Sun is moving into Pisces, that you have a quiet authority which very soon will speak for itself. Virgo, one aspect we've got today is a trine between the Moon and Mercury. So we've got the Moon in Scorpio making a trine to Mercury in Pisces. And because of this trine, I take the view that Virgos are going to have very little difficulty saying what's on their mind. People are going to understand it. They're going to understand you, and they're going to be pretty receptive to your message. And the reason they're going to be receptive to your message is because you'll know what to say and you'll know how to say it. Mercury is in Pisces, and Mercury is in your opposite sign, and because Mercury is in Pisces and it's in mutual reception to Jupiter, and that mutual reception to Jupiter is great for relationships, and because Mercury is in Pisces, you understand, you absolutely get it, you get what people are thinking and feeling, and you understand people's limits, and so this is going to have an impact on your behavior. You'll know how far you can go, and you'll know what you can say, and you'll know what things should be kept to yourself. So your ability to get on with people today, I think, could be really, really good. And at the same time, you can utilize people. You don't have to do anything on your own. You're not taking on the whole world, and you have to completely rely on your own resources. You can also make use of other people's resources. I mean, many people are going to be very generous today, and if there's something you want, you just have to ask. And when I say something you want, I'm probably not talking about anything material. I'm thinking more about getting advice, getting cooperation. You need a second opinion. You don't have to work it all out for yourself. And, don't be afraid to admit that you don't know something. I know that it's often not something one wants to do. One doesn't want to admit one's weakness, but sometimes it can be a very good thing to do. And we admit we don't know how to do something, and we'll find that in most cases people are going to be very happy to share what they know, and they're going to share their resources, and their resources in terms of wisdom and experience. So So Virgo, you can see that it's a day when things are working, when you really have a lot of resources at your disposal. You have your own resources. You have resources of your own knowledge and your own sensitivity, but you don't have to do anything, by yourself. And it goes without saying that relationships should work pretty well. You know how to deal with people. You know how to get close to people. You know what people are expecting, and you'll know their limits, and your sensitivity could be given an extra boost by the fact that Mercury is making a conjunction to Neptune heliocentrically. You're not on a geocentric chart that you're looking at now, but on the heliocentric chart. So that heliocentric conjunction between Mercury and Neptune, it certainly boosts your sensitivity. You're already quite sensitive, but this makes you sort of extra sensitive, and in certain situations you may be picking up things which may be a little bit disturbing, but it's not so much about the people immediately around you. I think that heliocentric Mercury conjunct Neptune allows you to pick up things going on everywhere. What the world is doing, where the world is going, how the world is changing. You can feel it, and you can feel people's pain. I think that is very likely. People's pain on the world, in this world, on this planet on which we're all living. You can feel it, and you certainly don't want to be overwhelmed by it, but there's not much you don't notice. And we're working not just in terms of sensations, but we are also talking about emotions as well. And if you notice something, then you could say, well, you notice it for a reason, and then you can decide, what is the best course of action as a way of response. Libra, Venus recently has been quite weak. Venus is your ruler, and so we do have to track Venus, see what it's doing. And it has been in Aries, which is your opposite sign, and Venus in Libra is in its detriment. Venus in Aries is not in its detriment. Venus in Aries is in its detriment, and some Librans might have been feeling that you weren't really able to fire on all cylinders. There were things you wanted to do, but you couldn't do them, and there could have been sort of moments of frustration. But now that the Sun is moving into Pisces, things change, because it means that the Sun and Venus are in mutual reception by exaltation. And so Venus is immediately strengthened. You now realize that things weren't quite so bad, and you might not feel that you're at such a disadvantage. And that, I think, was how some Librans did feel with Venus in Aries. But now you get support with the Sun moving into Pisces. And I think with the Sun moving into Pisces, it's now possible for you to start to think about ways in which you can take control. Things have been a little bit chaotic, and it hasn't always been easy to make sense of what's going on. But now with this mutual reception, you are starting to understand how things are working and how things are organizing. And you are able to control the flow of events and the control of information, and you have to be quite firm. There are certain things you don't want to do, you don't need to do, they're disruptive, and it's actually easier to say no to people, to refuse things, because it doesn't work. It's not going to happen. It's not useful. And as you have more control over your daily life, you're going to get stronger and stronger. And with the Sun making a mutual reception to Venus, it may have an impact on health. It may allow you to take control of your health in a way that you haven't done before. Perhaps recently you haven't felt that you were on 100% form. Somehow you could have felt better, and it might have felt that you just couldn't do much about it, and what was happening out there was impacting the way you were feeling physically and psychologically. But now with this, the Sun is in Pisces in mutual reception to Venus, you can take control of the situation, and for something is bad for you, you can avoid it. And some people might be bad for you, in which case you can get out of their way. It might have been difficult to get out of their way before, but now you can. And in general, Libra, you just feel more comfortable, and that's really what matters. Feeling comfortable, and also being in a position when you can actually start to look after your own material interests. I mean, we shouldn't forget that. And the moon is moving into Scorpio, and the moon in Scorpio is making a mutual reception to Mars in Cancer as it moves through Scorpio. And so with the moon moving through Scorpio, it's a time when Librans can think about their material resources, and if you're not happy with your material resources, you feel you haven't got enough of something, then that mutual reception between the moon and Mars is going to allow you to do something. And it's just something you maybe have wanted to do, but you haven't had the chance. But now you do get the chance. Not just today, but tomorrow as well. The moon will be in Scorpio tomorrow. The moon will be making a trine to Mars. I mean, it's arguably already making a trine to Mars. So today and tomorrow, on a material level, you can really make some changes, subtle changes. And if you want to bring something out into the open, or be open about some demand, maybe tell people that they're not entirely, that they're maybe doing something wrong, or they're not fully taking into account your material interests. And now is a good opportunity to do it. One final point is the fact that Venus is making a semi-square to Uranus, and Venus does represent you. The semi-square to Uranus may be about you feeling that you have to do something slightly different. You don't really want to do anything different. You want to do things in the same old way. But Sun's moving into Pisces. Things are changing. And with this Venus semi-square Uranus, it could be that the key to being successful, the key to getting what you want, bearing in mind what I was just talking about in terms of your financial interests, with that Venus semi-square Uranus is doing something a little bit unexpected. People were expecting you to behave in one way, and you behave in another way. And because you behave in another way, they don't really know how to respond. And it's at that point of confusion that you may be able to seize your advantage. Scorpio, moon is now in your sign, and this is good news. And the reason it is good news that the moon is in your sign, it's not just because the moon is in Scorpio. It's always good if you're a Scorpio to have the moon in Scorpio, even though it's said that the moon doesn't function particularly well in Scorpio because it's fallen in Scorpio. But don't worry about that too much. What matters is the moon is in your sign, and the moon is making a mutual reception with Mars. And of course, Mars is your ruler. So every time the moon moves into Scorpio at the moment, it will be a mutual reception to Mars. Moon moves into Scorpio. Moon will be in Scorpio next month, in March. It will be a mutual reception to Mars. because Mars will be in Cancer. The same for April. Not the same for May, I'm afraid, because by May Mars will be in Leo. But right now it really is fortunate having the moon in Scorpio, and it's fortunate because you can take things further. You can look at things in a new way, and you don't have to be stuck just focusing on one thing, same old way. You can look at things with a completely fresh perspective and also be able to act on it. So if you do want to do something differently, you can do it, and there's no need to feel threatened. And indeed, Scorpio, you're also feeling that Mars is slowing down. You're feeling this, something I've already started to discuss. But over this week, Mars is starting to slow down. It goes stationary direct next Monday on the 24th, and this is a great time for Scorpios. You can now start to think about moving forward, making real progress, and this moon Mars mutual reception is really going to help you contemplate the future and consider all the things that are possible in the future and in the near future. I mean, we're not talking about next year or next decade. We're talking about next week, and so it's close. Of course, that's something that many of us are feeling now, isn't it? The future is arrived. We're in the future. This is the future. That can be tough, but Scorpio, you're well prepared for the future. And one aspect we've got today, aside from that mutual reception, is we've got the moon making a trine to Mercury. That's a very nice trine. That moon trine Mercury. It's a very creative trine, and you've got the moon in mutual reception to Mars. Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter. So the moon and Scorpio, even though on the face of it they're in difficult signs because moon has fallen in Scorpio and Mercury's fallen and its detriment in Pisces, but because of that mutual reception, that's not how it works. This moon trine Mercury is about a free flow of information and also a free flow of creativity. And it is a time for Scorpios to be making the most of everything and to be asking yourself, what makes you different? It's certainly not a time, Scorpio, to be doing things other people's way. Independence is, absolutely crucial, and it's independence and having a keen respect for your own freedom. It is a time, as Mars comes to a standstill, freedom matters. It's doing things differently, not differently for the sake of it, but differently because you know that the future has arrived and you know that you've got something special to contribute. It's not about making everyone happy. It's not about conforming. It's about being a real individual. And Scorpio, that is something you absolutely can do. Sagittarius. The moon is in Scorpio, and Scorpio is the sign, just before Sagittarius. So in a day or two's time, a couple of days' time, the moon will be in Sagittarius, but it's not there yet. And with the moon in Scorpio, you may feel that it's a time when you don't necessarily have to engage, at least not in a dramatic and overt way. You can just be yourself. If you're not getting any attention, don't worry about it. It's probably good if you're not getting much attention. You don't need to have attention all the time. And indeed, I don't think you want to have attention all the time, especially now with the moon in Scorpio. But you're not being ignored. Your presence is very real, and certain people think that you're wonderful, and they're really keen to have a line of communication. That line of communication matters. The moon might be in Scorpio, but it's making a trine to Mercury, and that moon trine Mercury allows you to keep in touch with people, particularly people you know well. For example, your family, people close to you. And communication can happen in ways that are very subtle. Though in certain cases, it might be a good day for private, even secretive communication. So if you're talking to someone and you don't want anyone to know about it, now might be the time to do it. Or secret negotiations, secret discussions. I don't know what you're planning on doing today. I mean, that seems a bit dramatic, secret negotiations. But if you have an opportunity to engage in secret negotiations, then I would have thought, that should be something you can benefit from. And one of the big events today is the Sun moving into Pisces. So the Sun stays in Pisces for the next month and until the spring equinox, if you're in the northern hemisphere, or just plain equinox. I mean, I don't want to be biased in favour of the northern hemisphere. Of course, in the southern hemisphere, it's the beginning of autumn, but the equinox is certainly upon us. And while the Sun is moving in Pisces, that is a good time for Sagittarians to be focusing on themselves and on their own interests, and not feeling that you have to do anything, and making sure that what you have is completely in order. And the Sun in Pisces, it is actually in Jupiter's sign. Pisces is a sign ruled by Jupiter. So, and of course Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is of course your sign. So that Sun in Pisces, might sound a little bit boring, but it is grounding. And the Sun is making a mutual reception to Venus. And so because the Sun is in the exaltation of Venus in Pisces, and Venus is in the exaltation of the Sun, so with the Sun-Venus mutual reception, that allows you to really do something special, but in your own way, in your own space. It's not about getting recognition. It's about doing something that's important to you and not feeling you have to explain it or apologize about it. And that's maybe where the secrecy comes in. Secrecy is to be valued. If you don't tell people what you're doing, then you don't have to explain. You can perhaps be preparing for something. Maybe when you hit the equinox next month, you can be more open about it. But why would you need to tell people things? I mean, Sagittarians can like to tell people things, and they sometimes like to be outrageous, but there are moments of silence. Not just moments, there can be weeks of silence where Sagittarius might go off everyone's radar. And when you're off everyone's radar, that means that you are in a state of preparation and you're rebuilding something. And in fact, at the moment, Sagittarius, you are able to really put a lot of effort into making the most of who you are. A lot of effort, a lot of your dynamism should be going into boosting your own skills. That's where your dynamism should be going, and it shouldn't be frittered away on these short-term distractions going on around you. They're not important, because what matters is your space, and if in doubt, it doesn't have to be discussed. Capricorn, we have the Sun moving into Pisces, and this is something I've been talking about quite a lot in this video. I mean, that in a way, this is what this video is about. A big chunk of what this video is about in terms of a thumbnail. I've got a picture of fishes, so Sun in Pisces. It matters to all of us. And With the sun moving into Pisces, you feel better, I think. I think you weren't too happy about the sun being in Aquarius. It was maybe fun for some people, but not necessarily for you. And I think that with the sun moving into Pisces, you feel that you're over something, and you can be more relaxed, and also you can be more open. There might have been some things that you were keeping to yourself and you didn't necessarily want to discuss them. Perhaps because you were just working things out, and now you can be more communicative, and your communication skills do seem to be getting better. And the moon is in Scorpio, and the moon is making a trine to Mercury, and in fact the moon is actually making a trine to Saturn, and that might be more about tomorrow. But the moon makes a trine to Mercury, then it makes a trine to Saturn, and the moon is in Scorpio, which is quite a sociable part of your chart. And so with that trine, Capricorn, I think that you have a chance to tell people what's on your mind, and get in touch with people you know and like, and they'll be very interested in what you've got to say. And in terms of closer relationships, the moon trine Mercury is something to be welcomed. So if you have recently felt that you weren't able to discuss something, particularly if that something was quite intense, if you felt quite intense, maybe even emotionally charged, if you felt you weren't able to discuss it, now might be your chance, because the lines of communication are now really starting to be open, at all levels, with lots of different people. And so don't feel there's any need anymore for things to be kept to yourself. And you might also, Capricorn, be something of the voice. People get cast into different roles, apparently. I think this is said in things like group therapy. In group therapy, or different members of the group, they're given particular roles. One person is a person who emotes, who takes on the group's feelings. Another person might take on the group's anger. Another person might take on leadership. But another person might be the voice, voicing things that no one else is able to say. Saying things that are obvious, but for some reason people don't want to say it. And that voice, you might actually at the moment be the voice of the group, whatever that group is. There are things that are obvious to everyone, they don't want to say it. They're obvious to you, but you, as far as you're concerned, you can say it. And you can tell people what they know. And if you tell people what they know, if you announce to the world what the world already knows but doesn't want to say, then you can really move things along, and you can really be appreciated. So that might be part of your role today. And so that just illustrates how much things are changing. Capricorns can start to take a more central role with the sun moving into Pisces, and you have to think, where are you a social animal? Capricorns are not always sociable, but there are areas of your life where sociability matters. That would be the case, for example, if you were working, and that gives you your chance to tell it as it is. And your ability to get on with people, which right now is getting better, is really improving quite fast. Your ability to get on with people is going to really be helpful, and it will be helpful, I think, in a collective way. And the group is really going to appreciate you, Capricorn. So have a new look at things, and just notice how much things have changed. And if change happens that you weren't expecting, maybe not just that you weren't expecting, that other people weren't expecting, that the group wasn't expecting, your response is likely to be the right response. You'll be able to understand what's happened probably at a far greater speed than anyone else, and then you can give your view, and your view and your recommendations will very much be appreciated. So Capricorn, that's it. The key thing is, Capricorn, you need to start taking a more central role, and you've got something to offer, and from a societal perspective, it may actually be time to start thinking about moving to the center stage, but in your own way. It is quite subtle, because you're a Capricorn, you're not an Aries or a Sagittarius, but you do it in your own way, and you can really move things along for everyone in a way that is completely positive. Aquarius, there are things going on. The moon is now in Scorpio, Sun is now in Pisces, and Sun is in mutual reception to Venus by exaltation, and everyone can feel that this change, and you included, and you are trying to make sense of how things are changing, and you're trying to, I think, at some level articulate it. You don't want to just be at the receiving end of change. You want to be an active player, and you want to understand what is happening. And so that means Aquarius, that you want to express your opinions, and you want to express what you believe is obvious. And you might be very sure that something is obvious, but no one else seems to fully recognize this. And sometimes the obvious just has to be stated. You tell it as it is. You're not quite sure how people are going to respond. Some people might respond badly, but if it has to be said, it has to be said. And I think you do have an opportunity to just communicate to a wider audience and to a wider world, and what you are communicating is what is obvious. And you're helped by the fact that the moon is making a trine to Mercury. So the moon is in Scorpio, it's making a trine to Mercury in Pisces, and you tell people how things are, and they can listen to you, and I think they will listen to you, but if they ignore you, well, that's their problem, it's not your problem. And you'll be particularly good at talking about things that are of a financial or business nature. Might seem a bit boring, people don't want to hear, they don't want to know, but maybe they do, maybe they need to know. And if you give people a frank assessment, then in the end, you will be appreciated. And that might be a lot of what today is about, giving a frank assessment, especially in terms of money, because right now, with all these planets moving into Pisces, Sun has just gone into Pisces, with all these planets in Pisces, and because Saturn, your ruler, has been in Pisces since the beginning of March 2023, with all these planets in Pisces, money matters. You can't ignore the financial dimension, and it can be about personal finances, it can be about governmental, global finances, where the economy is going, at all levels. It's something that you regard as being important, and if you feel that something is wrong, might not affect you, could affect someone else, but if you feel something is wrong, then say it, because there are going to be people out there who really want to hear, and so that might be part of your role. And in general, Aquarius, you know how to speak right now. Recently you might have felt you had to speak, that there was something to say, but you just didn't know how to say it. You just didn't feel that you had the knowledge or the connections or the confidence. But now it is coming together, and I think that the knowledge is important. You may have felt you didn't understand something. It was taking you time to understand something, but now you do understand, and because you understand, then that gives you the authority to say what's on your mind. Turning to relationships, the Sun is changing sign, and the Sun in the Aquarian chart very often does have an impact on relationships. That is because the Sun is ruler of Leo, and Leo is your opposite sign. And so the Sun has been in Aquarius. The Sun has been in its detriment in Aquarius. It hasn't been functioning particularly well in that sign. And then the moment the Sun moves into Pisces, it just gets so much stronger. It's out of Aquarius and it's in mutual reception with Venus by exaltation. And that might mean when you look at other people, particularly the important people in your lives, you might see some kind of change. They might be becoming more definite, much stronger in terms of who they are and what they want. And there's less confusion, which is kind of surprising because the sign Pisces has a sort of a stereotype of being, like the fish, this way, that way, all over the place. But this time around, with the Sun making that mutual reception to Venus, it is more definite. And the people close to you, they do have opinions. They are strong. They certainly shouldn't be underestimated. And if you treat them properly, then they'll treat you properly in return. So the important people in your life can be a real bonus. And in fact, some people who may not be important in your life at the moment can become important if you're prepared to give them a chance. Pisces. The Pisces season has arrived. Okay, it might not arrive until very early in the morning in New Zealand tomorrow, but basically the Sun is moving into Pisces. And in London time, 10:06 a.m. today, Sun is in Pisces. That's 5:06 a.m. in New York, 2:06 a.m. on the West Coast in California or British Columbia. So Sun is there, it's arrived, and I think that is got to be good news, hasn't it? You've got loads of planets in Pisces. You are where it's all at. So hopefully with the Sun in Pisces, you'll be able to make the most of everything. And when the Sun moves into Pisces, it makes a mutual reception by exaltation with Venus. So the Sun is really quite strong in Pisces, and you can assert yourself, but not in a way that is unpleasant or aggressive or obnoxious. You just have a natural ability to be yourself and to be respected, and people will just appreciate your presence, especially with that Sun mutual reception to Venus by exaltation. And so that mutual reception will be with you, throughout the Sun's passage through Pisces. And so this overall does put you in a very strong position, and you need to be able to harness your energy. You do have a lot of energy at the moment, and you can channel it in many different areas, but fundamentally it is about you, and you are the person that matters. And you're going to be further helped today, and tomorrow. The moon is moving through Scorpio, Pisces friendly sign of Scorpio. It's making a trine to Mercury. The moon is strong actually at the moment because it's in mutual reception with Mars by sign, and Mercury is in mutual reception with Jupiter by sign. So moon trine Mercury really does allow you to elevate everything around you by what you say. And don't be afraid of being imaginative. People want imagination now. All that stuff in Pisces, it's a very imaginative sign. You're an imaginative person, and your imagination shouldn't be kept to yourself. You need to tell people what you think, and you don't have to explain. It's not really about explaining. Maybe it's more about you have to show what you've got. Don't they say about writing? It's about you show you don't tell. That's what you're supposed to do. Effective sort of writing. That's my problem. I'm not very good at I'm very good at explaining, but I'm not so good at showing. But just demonstrating things, and this is something you really can do, and it can be a time when Pisceans, which is already a very artistic sign, it can be more artistic than usual, and you can create things of really very high quality, which are really a picture of what is happening around us, and you can encapsulate it all, whether it's with a painting, a poem, a piece of prose, whatever it is, or just by something you say, the words you say. I don't know, you might put that up on a blog or on YouTube or however you want to do it. People want to hear. You've got a message to deliver, and a lot of us actually have a message to deliver. It's not just Pisces. I was, talking to, to Capricorns and Aquarians. They've certainly got a message to deliver. Yeah, perhaps we've all got a message to deliver. But you, Pisces, have got a particular message, and it is about, reminding everyone of who you are and your imaginative capacity, and just demonstrating that there is another world out there. It's not just about material realities, and in that way you can really sort of help to move everyone along and elevate people in a spiritual sense. But I suppose it starts with yourself, but at the moment you've got access to so much, Pisces, and it's just important that you're able at some level to share it. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and I now want to look at things from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 52. Keeping still. It's not a very dramatic hexagram. We have had it quite recently, and it's just telling us that we have to be still. There's nothing actually that we have to do, and maybe this is demonstrated by what's going on astrologically. Astrologically, we've got the sun moving into Pisces, we've got the moon moving into Scorpio. These are water signs. These are signs which are about feeling, and they are the two mute signs. I know that the moon is making a trine to Mercury, but traditionally they're mute because of their rulers. Pisces, it's ruled by fish. The fish is a symbol of Pisces. Scorpion is a symbol of Scorpio. They don't say much. They don't say anything. They don't make any noise. And the I Ching is telling us that we don't necessarily have to make any noise, and we should really restrict our activities, and just be calm. There's nothing actually that has to be done. And if there is a danger, if we're aware of some danger, something that might affect us, we can just keep still. And if we keep still, the danger is likely to pass. And there is a moving line. The top line moves, and the top line moves is the culmination of a process, and it is fortunate. And we keep still. Everyone else keeps still, and we can be devoted to that state of doing nothing. We're not doing nothing in a lazy way. We're just consolidating ourselves, and we're doing the right thing. And in fact, we may know we have to keep still. So there might be a sense of compulsion here. We have evaluated the situation, and we know that there is nothing really that can be done, nothing that should be done, and keeping still is the right approach. And there is, because of this moving line, we move to a different hexagram, and the hexagram we move to is a hexagram number 15, which is modesty. So in a way, that's more of the same. It's not a time for showing off. It's not a time for telling people, who we are, what we can do, for boasting. Just keep it simple. I mean, okay, we could do something dramatic if we wanted. We could be brave. We could stick our head above a parapet. We could. And we might get good results. But we'll get even better results by doing nothing. And it just may be a day when we should just be sitting on our hands and letting something pass. Or it just may be about understanding. There are things changing. The sun is moving into Pisces. We need to evaluate this, and the best way of doing that is to just stay where we are. And now I want to look at Pluto. And I'm not going to talk about Pluto like now. I just wanted to look at the chart of the discovery of Pluto and a few other things about Pluto, because it is the 95th anniversary of the discovery of Pluto, and it was discovered by Clyde Tombaugh on February the 18th, February the 18th, 1930. And so Clyde Tombaugh, I think he was really young. He was in his early 20s, and he was working at the Lowell Observatory. Percival Lowell was the man who initiated the search for what was known as Planet X. And so I'm not quite sure what he was doing in 1930, whether he was still alive in 1930. I'm not sure. I should have just kind of researched this. But Clyde Tombaugh is the person who we remember, or we recognize as the discoverer of Pluto. And so the discovery of Pluto did not happen like with someone was looking at the skies in a telescope and they suddenly noticed something. It was about looking at photographs. So Clyde Tombaugh was looking at photographs, and I think he noticed some anomaly. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he made the connection. And so 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Arizona is when we look at. Let's have a look at the chart. So the discovery of Pluto. Here's a chart for the discovery of Pluto. It's in sort of Flagstaff, Arizona, and so here's the chart, and this is the moment. And when you look at that moment, you could say that this is the introduction of Pluto into astrologers' worldview, and maybe at some level, this chart is saying something about what Pluto is all about. And we see that the moon is in Scorpio, and moon at 13 Scorpio in the Via Combusta. And because of that, Pluto has become so linked with Scorpio, you could argue. I mean, some people would say that Pluto rules Scorpio. I do not believe Pluto rules Scorpio. I think Pluto has an association with Scorpio, and Pluto was at its most dramatic when it was moving through Scorpio. If you were around in the 80s, you'll remember Pluto in Scorpio and the AIDS epidemic scare, however you want to see it, when AIDS just dominated people's attention in the 80s, and it really dominated and changed people's attitudes to sort of sexuality and so on, completely changed when Pluto was in Scorpio. And the fact that the moon was in Scorpio at the time of Pluto's discovery, I think that really does ring true. And the moon is in Scorpio conjunct the South Node. I mean, there is a sense in which Pluto can be overly intense, and that's how Pluto might work. And Mercury was conjunct Mars, and we see Pluto as being about being quite something that is quite intense, and it's got something to say, really. Would you agree with that? And when it speaks with power. And the Sun is in Aquarius. The Sun was not, although it was February the 18th, the Sun was still in Aquarius at Pluto's discovery, at 2935 Aquarius. And so maybe this tells us something else about Pluto. We see Pluto as being a planet which is really emotional. I mean, that's how people seem to perceive Pluto, as being about deeper emotions. We really kind of focus on the Moon and Scorpio side of Pluto, but maybe we should be thinking about other things. The fact that there were 3 personal planets in Aquarius at the time of its discovery, and maybe we need to look at Pluto again. There is maybe something a little bit independent about Pluto, and maybe Pluto is capable of more thinking than we give it credit. I mean, these are just thoughts, so I'm not saying this is the case, but I'm just suggesting if you want to sort of explore Pluto's meaning, you might want to look at the chart of its discovery. And the man who discovered Pluto was Clyde Tombaugh. So he was born on February the 4th, 1906. So it was an Aquarian who discovered this planet, and he discovered it while the Sun was in Aquarius. And one aspect that is very clear in his chart, and I don't have a time of birth for Clyde Tombaugh. So he's born, just February the 4th, 1906 in Streator, Illinois. But it's just interesting that his Pluto is at 2052 Gemini, and it's sextile the North Node, which is at 2058 Leo, and so trine the South Node at 2058 Aquarius. So the North and the South Node are very much about what we should be doing, our direction, what we're put on the planet for. And so so the fact that he has Pluto aspecting his nodal axis does indicate that his destiny was very much about the planet Pluto. And as far as what aspects he had when Pluto was discovered. So Clyde Tombaugh had his Mercury at 3 degrees Aquarius, and Mercury at the time of the discovery was at 3 degrees Aquarius. So he discovered Pluto at the time of his Mercury return. Now that 3 degrees Aquarius keeps coming up, by the way, and it's interesting that Pluto is approaching 3 degrees Aquarius right now, and that's something we need to think about. I might need a separate video. I've just realized this. But so 3 degrees Aquarius, he has Mercury at 3 degrees Aquarius, and then Mercury. So he had his Mercury return. So that's the first point to make. Then you have the question, why is Pluto called Pluto? And the reason Pluto is called Pluto is because there was a competition. There was a competition which I think children participated in 1930. I don't know, was that right? I'm not quite sure how the competition was arranged, but anyway, there was a child who participated in this competition, and the competition was to come up with a name for Pluto. And the winner of the competition was a girl called Venetia Burney. Venetia Burney, she think she lived in Oxford, in England, and she came up with the name Pluto. And her logic for coming up with Pluto was twofold. Firstly, it makes sense. We know that from her perspective, there was a classical link. So you had Uranus, Neptune. What do you call it? Well, you need to keep going with a classical theme: Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. So that was the first reason. But she came up there with another reason, because it was at the Percival Lowell laboratory. Percival Lowell, PL, Pluto. So she was the person who came up with it. Now here is the horoscope of Venetia Burney. I don't have her time of birth, so I think she was born in Oxford. And so here's a chart of Venetia Burney, July the 11th, 1918. She was pretty clever. I think she went to Oxford or Cambridge. I think she went to Oxford and she became an accountant and then a school teacher. And she lived a long life. And when Pluto got downgraded to being a minor planet, her opinions were canvassed, and she was asked by journalists or something. I think she was a bit disappointed by the change. But the thing about Venetia Burney's chart is her Mercury. Her Mercury is at 3 degrees Leo. So her Mercury, if we go back to the Pluto, if we look at the chart of Pluto's discovery, there is Venetia Burney's chart, and here's Pluto's discovery. There's the discovery of Mercury the discovery of Pluto. Mercury was at 3 Aquarius. So she had Mercury opposition her Mercury at the time of the discovery. So it definitely had a link with her. So her Mercury, her imagination, her mind, her creativity in terms of coming up with a name was really triggered by the discovery Mercury. So that's fitting. And also Clyde Tombaugh, the discoverer of Pluto. If we look at Clyde Tombaugh's chart, Clyde Tombaugh had his Mercury at 3 degrees Aquarius. So Venetia Burney's Mercury was opposition Clyde Tombaugh's Mercury, as well as being opposition the Pluto discovery's Mercury. So that's a powerful connection there. And talking about Clyde Tombaugh, one thing I forgot to mention was his solar arc directions. So I don't have a time of birth for Clyde Tombaugh, but he was just turned 24 at the discovery of Pluto, and if we do his solar arc directions for the discovery of Pluto, here's his solar arc directions. And so if we put Clyde Tombaugh on the inner wheel and the progress chart on the outer wheel, Clyde Tombaugh had his Jupiter at 26 Taurus and his Pluto at 2052 Gemini, but his solar arc directed Jupiter was at 2103 Gemini. So his solar arc directed his solar arc directed Jupiter was exactly conjunct his Pluto. And so you can see, if you look at his chart, he's got Jupiter and Pluto exactly 24 degrees apart. So when that conjunction was exact, that's when he discovered Pluto. So there is a Pluto link in his chart. And now I want to consider this chart and some kind of weird linkages. And so in terms of weird linkages, so let's just go back to the Pluto discovery chart. So at the time of Pluto's discovery, we had 3 degrees 34 Leo rising, and 3 degrees 34 Aquarius on the descendant, and we had Mercury on the descendant. And people think there is a view that when people think that, when you have a planet being discovered, it's like something new comes into the world, something new that we hadn't been aware of before. And some would say that 1930 was broadly the beginning of the atomic age. So you think of plutonium. Plutonium is one of the key ingredients in an atomic bomb. And within just over 15 years after Pluto's discovery, the first atomic bomb was detonated in New Mexico. But first of all, plutonium had to be discovered. It had to be isolated. And there is actually a chart for the isolation of plutonium. And here is the chart for the isolation of plutonium on December the 14th, 1940. Notice Pluto's position. Notice the ascendant. So the ascendant was at 4 degrees 40 Leo when plutonium was isolated in Berkeley in California. And in other words, Pluto was exactly rising. I mean, that in itself is an incredible chart. And it really does show us that plutonium and Pluto are intimately linked. But if we compare the Pluto at the time Pluto was discovered, if it was 4 in the afternoon, the ascendant was 3 degrees Leo. So the ascendant was the same at the discovery of plutonium as it was at the discovery of Pluto. And that's kind of amazing. And there is Mercury. So Pluto, transiting Pluto when the discovery of plutonium was opposition the discovery of Pluto's Mercury, and was right on the ascendant. And I think that is really quite a powerful coincidence. But is it coincidence? I just like these kind of charts because they really show us that astrology is working, at least from my subjective viewpoint. Then another big event regarding plutonium was the explosion of the first atomic bomb. Now, the Hiroshima bomb was a uranium bomb, but Nagasaki was a plutonium bomb. But the very first bomb to be exploded was plutonium. And so here is a chart of the first atomic bomb. And so this happened on July the 16th, 1945, and in White Sands, New Mexico. I've gone White Sands. Is it wherever it was in New Mexico? And so here is in a wheel. We've got the discovery of Pluto. Outer wheel, we've got the explosion of the first atomic bomb, and Pluto had moved on. So Pluto, at the time of discovery, Pluto was at 1746 Cancer, but at the time of the actual explosion, it was at 922 Leo, and Mars at the time of Pluto's discovery was at 928 Aquarius. So Mars represents the anger, the warlike qualities of this planet that was discovered. And so Pluto is the ruler of plutonium, and then plutonium is used for a nuclear explosion. And at this time, Pluto was exactly opposition the Mars of the discovery chart. And so that I find very interesting. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm not quite sure why this linkage works, but it does strike me as being very real. Also, Neptune, by the way, is sextile the discovery ascendant. I mean, we don't know exactly when Pluto was discovered, but the nearest time we have is 4 in the afternoon, which would give us early Leo. So there's some food for thought. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about Pluto and its discovery and how it potentially links with other events like the discovery of plutonium and the first nuclear test. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very, very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I would of course be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.